The room was filled with powerful people, crystal lights and expensive laughter, yet no one noticed that death was sitting quietly on the table. Guards trained to spot danger stood just feet away, scanning faces and exits, confident that everything was under control. The billionaire smiled, unaware that the very drink placed in front of him could end his life within minutes. And then there was her, a tired waitress, invisible to everyone in the room, who noticed something no one else did, a tiny detail, a silent warning, a moment where fear and courage collided. In the next few seconds, she would have to choose between staying quiet and saving a life, knowing that one wrong move could cost her everything. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom shimmered like frozen starlight, reflecting off polished marble floors and tables dressed in silver and white. Yet beneath the beauty lurked a quiet tension no one could name. This was not just another luxury gala. It was a night that gathered power, money, influence, and secrets under one roof. Every guest wore a smile carefully practiced, every laugh measured, every glance calculated. In the center of it all sat the billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the country, his presence commanding attention without effort, surrounded by guards trained to notice every movement, every threat, every irregular breath in the room. And yet, the danger that would almost end his life that night came not from the shadows, but from something resting silently on a silver tray. Before we continue, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who believes good people still exist, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that heroes don't always wear suits or carry power. She was just a waitress, that's how everyone saw her, dressed in a plain black uniform, hair tied neatly back, moving quietly between tables like a shadow meant not to be remembered. Her name badge was small, barely noticeable, and most guests never looked long enough to read it. She had worked events like this before, rich people, expensive food, careless behavior. But something about this night felt wrong from the moment she stepped into the hall. It wasn't fear exactly, it was an unease that crawled under her skin and refused to leave. She had learned to trust that feeling, born from years of surviving situations where paying attention meant staying alive. Her job was simple: serve drinks, clear plates, avoid eye contact, and disappear. But as she moved closer to the billionaire's table, carrying a tray of crystal glasses filled with amber liquor, something made her slow her steps. The guards were alert, scanning faces, watching hands, monitoring exits, yet none of them were watching the glass itself. She noticed a faint residue clinging unnaturally to the rim of one glass, almost invisible under the lights. It wasn't condensation, it wasn't a fingerprint, it was something else, something she had seen once before in a very different, much darker chapter of her life. Her heart began to pound, not with excitement, but with the weight of memory. Years ago, she had lost someone she loved because of a poisoned drink at a private party where no one believed a small mistake could happen. That night had taught her a painful lesson. Danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. As she stood there, frozen for half a second too long, one of the guards glanced at her with irritation, signaling for her to move along. The billionaire himself was distracted, laughing politely at something a guest had said, unaware that death sat inches from his hand. Her mind raced. She was nobody here, a waitress accusing someone powerful, or worse, interrupting a billionaire, could lose her job, her dignity, maybe even her safety. But if she stayed silent, she would be complicit in something unforgivable.
She felt the familiar weight of struggle press against her chest. Her life had never been easy. She worked double shifts, lived in a small apartment, sent money home, and carried scars that never showed. No one had ever stepped in to save her when she needed it most. And yet, here she was, faced with a choice that could change everything, for him and for her. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the tray, deliberately shifting the suspicious glass away from the billionaire's reach. It was a small movement, subtle enough that no one noticed, but intentional enough to buy time. Her breath was shallow now. She knew she couldn't stop there. She had to act decisively, even if it meant drawing attention she didn't want. The music swelled softly in the background. The guests laughed, unaware of how close the night was to turning into a tragedy. She took a step forward, heart pounding like a drum, knowing that once she crossed this invisible line, there would be no turning back. The seconds that followed felt stretched, unreal, as if time itself hesitated to move forward. The waitress forced herself to remain calm, even as every instinct screamed at her to retreat. The guards still hadn't noticed anything wrong. Their focus remained outward, trained on threats that looked dangerous, not on a glass that appeared harmless. She felt painfully aware of how invisible she was, and yet how powerful her awareness had suddenly become. She leaned slightly closer to the table, her voice steady but urgent, drawing just enough attention to interrupt the moment without causing a scene. The billionaire finally turned his gaze toward her, his expression shifting from polite indifference to mild curiosity. His eyes flicked to the tray, then back to her face, clearly not expecting anything unusual from someone in her position. She could feel the room holding its breath without knowing why. The guards reacted instantly once they noticed her hesitation, stepping forward, suspicion flashing across their faces. One wrong word, one wrong move, and she could be removed, or worse, before anyone took her seriously. But something in her expression made them pause. It wasn't panic, it wasn't arrogance, it was certainty mixed with fear, the kind that doesn't come from imagination, but from recognition. What followed unfolded quickly. The glass was taken away, examined under proper lighting, and the faint residue she had noticed became undeniable. The atmosphere shifted from celebration to controlled chaos in moments. Guests were quietly escorted out, the music stopped, and the once glittering hall turned cold and tense. The billionaire was moved to safety, surrounded by guards who now realized how close they had come to failure. She stood off to the side, shaking slightly, her job forgotten, her uniform suddenly heavy on her shoulders. She expected anger, accusations, dismissal. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar, respect directed toward her from people who had ignored her existence minutes earlier. The billionaire looked at her differently now, not as staff, but as someone who had done what an entire security team had failed to do. As the truth settled in, the reality of what she had prevented became overwhelming. She hadn't just saved a powerful man, she had stopped an act that would have rippled through countless lives, employees, families, markets, futures, and she had done it alone, armed with nothing but observation and courage. Yet even as gratitude surrounded her, doubt crept in. She wondered what would happen once the night ended. Would this moment matter tomorrow? Or would she return to her quiet struggles, her bravery fading into a footnote no one remembered? Her life had taught her to not expect miracles, not to believe that doing the right thing always led to reward. The investigation moved swiftly, and as details emerged, it became clear this was not an accident. It was a calculated attempt, planned carefully, hidden behind luxury and trust. The realization sent chills through everyone involved. The billionaire himself sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing how close he had come to death and how unlikely his survival had been. When he finally looked at her again, there was something different in his eyes. Not just gratitude, but reflection. He saw not just the act, but the person behind it. A woman who had every reason to stay silent, yet chose courage over comfort. As the night drew to a close, she was escorted out, not dismissed, but protected. The city outside felt colder, quieter, heavier than before. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, unsure of what the morning would bring, unsure if this night would change her life, or simply become another story she carried alone. The days that followed were strange and uncertain. News of the attempted poisoning never reached the public in full detail, but whispers traveled fast in certain circles. She returned to work expecting things to be the same, but nothing ever truly goes back to normal after you've stared death in the face, especially someone else's. She replayed the moment over and over, wondering what would have happened if she had ignored her instincts, if fear had won. Then came the unexpected, a request to meet. No explanations, no promises, just an invitation she almost refused, convinced it was a misunderstanding or a formality that would lead nowhere. But when she arrived, she realized this was not about formality, it was about recognition. The billionaire had not forgotten. He spoke not only of that night, but of her life, her struggles, the invisible battles carried by people the world rarely sees. He acknowledged something few ever had, that courage does not belong only to the powerful, and that heroism often comes from those with the least protection. What followed wasn't just gratitude, it was transformation. Opportunities opened that she never imagined possible. Education, security, stability, not handed to her as charity, but offered as respect for the strength she had shown. And with each door that opened, she felt something heal inside her. For the first time, the world responded to her goodness instead of exploiting it. But the most powerful change wasn't financial or professional, it was internal. She began to believe that her life mattered beyond survival, that paying attention, caring, and acting with compassion could alter destinies. She chose to use what she gained not just for herself, but for others like her, people overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Before this story ends, we ask you to comment one thing. Do you believe ordinary people can change extraordinary outcomes? Write your answer in the comments below. As time passed, the night of the gala became a turning point not just in her life, but in many others. Policies changed, security practices improved, lives were saved because one waitress noticed what others didn't. And though the world would never fully know her name, the impact of her courage echoed quietly, powerfully. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, stories that remind us that kindness, awareness, and bravery still matter. Because sometimes the person who saves the world isn't the one with power or protection, but the one who simply chooses to care when it matters most.